Jersey City Police Union joins suit over off-duty pot policy. I didn't read the underlying complaints that were filed, but if I'm reading the tea leaves here, it looks like a couple of cops were exercising their New Jersey right to go buy and use cannabis, and the police and the head of whatever public safety. Everybody has a different name for this shit, but the city of Jersey City and their head of public safety sued these officers trying to get them fired. And it implicates a lot of things. If you're a cop, you have to carry a gun. If you're smoking pot, we've got this problem we've talked about where you can be prosecuted. You can't own guns if you're an illegal user of substances. And this is just a continuation of the theme. Now, what I found to be encouraging is back in the day when I was representing a lot of cops, they drank like fish. They could not take a psychotropic drug or go to a counselor for PTSD because it was not what the guys approved, and smoking weed was never considered. Well, now fast forward to a point where, I know what cops do. And when you get off work, I know if I have a busy day, I like to, break out the pipe. Okay? Cops are not allowed to do that. It's encouraging to see that they're standing up and go, why not? Okay, how does this affect my on-the-job performance? And again, we're talking about state law now. We're not talking about the federal law. And under the state law, if you're 21 or older, you can go buy cannabis and use it. Okay? And they're trying to make a distinction. Well, yeah, but you're a public safety officer. And the bigger question is, if I smoke pot off the job, why is that different than having a beer when I'm sitting home watching the ball game? If I'm not doing the job, what does that affect me? Now you open the bigger question of how much does the federal law play into trying to control police officers' conduct, and especially over their gun rights? And that's what's mixed up in all of this. And I don't know that I have an answer yet, but the Police Officers Benevolent Association was allowed to intervene in a federal case, add their name to the defendant list, make sure that everybody's represented that's a police officer, and this organization represents the rank and file cops. And they want their voice that not only should we not be punished if we have cannabis in our system that's off duty, but I should not have any concerns about if I want to go do that. And that's the anxiety you put on these cops. Now, I'm happy to see that police officers are jumping into the hypocrisy we've been dealing with cannabis policy and law enforcement for as long as I can remember, well over 50 years since the Controlled Substances Act came about. And I'm hoping that can play into pushing local legislatures or state legislatures and the Congress to do something meaningful about this. Because if the cops are standing up and go, hey, I'm no different than anybody else out there. If I want to smoke a blunt when I get home, or drink a beer, have a shot of scotch or whatever, that should not be prohibited, and I should not lose my job as a cop because of it. But it's complicated because of this federal gun law position that has been taken. So we'll wait and see how this bears out over time. But for me, I'm hopeful. The cops are coming onto our side, at least at some level. I'm going to throw this back at you guys. What do y'all think about this?
Man, I go ahead, Soham.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think this is a step in the right direction, and it's getting to an issue that has been at odds in other cases. It reminds me of the Dish Network case in Colorado, where a disabled gentleman was fired by Dish Network for off-the-use medical cannabis use when he was a patient.
I remember that.
And what the Supreme Court's decision in the Colorado Supreme Court in that case claimed that despite Colorado having a lawful activity statute, and this is really the core of what I'm getting at, that says you can't be fired for engaging in something that is lawful activity in the state while not at work. The Supreme Court in that case claimed that Colorado's medical marijuana amendment was not establishing medical cannabis use as a lawful activity. It was just a protection from criminal prosecution for it. So I think this is that, and many states have that lawful activity statute. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dale. You're probably a better person to speak to this than I am. But I think as we're moving towards pushing the use of marijuana as something that is classified as legal activity within a state, then it makes it harder for them to have decisions like this where you can get fired for off-the-clock use, or you're not allowed to own a firearm, or whatever it may be.
Well, you're right. There are a number of these lawful activity statutes around the country. It gets complicated when the policymakers want to keep throwing the federal law into it. Now, here in California, we dealt with this back in 2008 in the San Diego Normal case, where our court said, nah, the feds can still do what the hell they want. We have a right to make our own laws, and the federal law does not affect us, because there's a split of authority here that they gave in the Controlled Substance Act. Federal law is federal jurisdiction. Everything else is state jurisdiction. And they're trying to, to mess this all up. And what I see now is it's being untethered. And the people that we used to fight against are now getting on the side of untethering this. And I mean, I know enough cops to know they are suicidal. Okay, some of them are just don't know what the hell to do, and they were never given the opportunity to get proper help. And I'm glad to see that this is changing. And if you find that you can relax and get sleep and deal with your PTSD by using cannabis, I'm all for that, because it makes a safer cop. And that's my concern. You get these people. I had SWAT officers that were literally sucking on their shotguns at night, thinking about blowing their heads off, because they had no other place to turn to besides a bottle, and that wasn't fixing their problems.
Very true. Very true. I mean, I don't think that they necessarily have the right to tell cops that they can't do stuff during their off time, as long as it's not impairing their ability to do the work of the people and the work to serve the public.
There's a whole other layer here, though, that I don't know if it's been brought up on other episodes or whatnot, but we frequently, and even my article somewhat touches on this, but like there is obviously a huge disconnect between the lawmakers' understanding of this plant and the way they associate it with gun ownership. Right, and accessibility. And if we are to say that law enforcement officers can use cannabis on their off-work hours, suddenly we have firearms in the hands of people who are consuming cannabis. Right?
I see what you're doing there.
Right? And so this is the conundrum that they're all thinking about, right? Like, how do we do this? We can't do this. If we do this, then we have to admit we're wrong about everything else.
Yeah. Very, very.
There's the problem, Randy.
The hardest thing for the American government to ever do is admit when they're wrong.
Well, but to try to get them to admit that they're kind of short on being right, that might be a victory here. And the beat cops all know that cannabis use was just low-hanging fruit to get them probable cause to clear up your ass and arrest you. Yep. And they know that it was all bullshit, because I've talked to so many of them about it. They don't give a shit, but they're told you use that smell for probable cause and go forward. Once we start pulling away those tools, they call them, this whole fabric begins to fall apart. And it still infuriates me that these policymakers, these old narcotics officers who still continue to have way too much power in policymaking inside law enforcement, will not accept that anybody could ever use a drug and be able to be a cop or even be a decent moral human being. It's just disgusting. But science and facts just keep swallowing these people up, because their stories they put out are just absolute bullshit. Nobody believes them anymore. So,
and I mean, the bigger irony of that too is that look at what the type of activities that a lot of undercover narcotics officers engage in to make their cases and to make their arrests. Like for some of those people to make a moral judgment on somebody else for consuming a substance is outrageous.
Fair.
You have no idea, Sloam. I've been inside some of these law enforcement investigations, and the rights of the people that they're investigating are the last thing they're thinking about. They're just worrying about covering their asses and trying to get somebody they want.
CYA, right, Dale? CYA. Cover your ass.
Oh man, I'm telling you, I mean, I've done it myself. I was after a chomo one time, and we just violated this guy's rights right and left. But we got him. Okay, so it was a little
Thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to shoot him myself, but they wouldn't let me go that far.
Oh man, you should have told them all to just turn around, Dale.
Yeah, well, it'll happen.
Yes.
Karma's a bitch, you know.
That is so
It
true.
is.
So true. We are going to keep this train rolling. We are going to roll right on in